The Long March, was it a success or a failure? Your opinion of whether the Long March was a success or failure could well be determined by your political viewpoint. It was successful in that it was the first step in unifying the majority of the Chinese people onto the road of the eventual People's Republic of China, but equally many will view it as a failure for the number of lives lost on that epic journey. Here in this video, my intention is to try and inform you of the key events and the subsequent promotion of Mao Zedong to the role of the leader of the Chinese Communist Party. In October 1934, during the Chinese Civil War between the Chinese Communists and the Nationalists, the Communist Army broke through the enemy nationalist lines that began an epic flight from their then base in Jiangxi province up to their new headquarters in northern China's Shaanxi province. Known as the Long March, the journey took just over a year and covered several thousand kilometers. Estimates vary from around 6,000 up to as many as 12,000. The Long March saw the emergence of Mao Zedong as undisputed leader of the Communists. The background to the Long March. The Chinese Civil War began in 1927, and in 1931 its leader Mao Zedong was elected the chairman of the newly established Soviet Republic of Jiangxi, a state within a state in southeast China. From 1930 until 1933, the Nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek launched a series of encirclement campaigns to eradicate the communist forces. The Communists under Mao employed guerrilla tactics to successfully resist the first four of these campaigns. Before the onset of the fifth campaign, Mao was removed as chairman, and the new leadership of the Communists employed more conventional tactics, with the result being a defeat for the defending Communist forces. October the 16th, 1934. With the imminent threat of defeat looming, the remaining Communists decided that escape was the best option by breaking through the encircling Nationalists at their weakest point. Secrecy and other confusing tactics meant it was some time before the Nationalist leadership realized that the main body of the Communists had escaped. Estimates put the retreating army at around 85,000 soldiers and thousands more accompanying personnel. Everything was carried on the backs of packed animals and the fleeing men. The line of marchers stretched for miles. Generally, they moved at night or when the enemy was not close by. Long columns of torches could be viewed snaking the way over valleys and hills. What was the Long March? The Long March refers to the journey undertaken by the Chinese Communist Party and its Red Army from their base in southeast China's Jiangxi province to the province of Shaanxi in northern China from the 16th of October 1934 until the 20th of October the following year. The treacherous journey took them through western and northern China, often on a circular route to confuse the enemy in tracking them. In addition to enemy forces, they also had to overcome difficult terrain, a perilous climate, starvation, disease, and encounters with hostile tribes and warlords. The Long March was completed almost entirely on foot and was the equivalent of walking from Paris to Moscow and back, or a return trip from Chicago to Las Vegas. Of the approximate 100,000 that set out on the journey, some estimates put it even higher. Only around 8,000 made it safely to Shaanxi. The high number of losses would suggest the Long March was a failure. It resulted from a military retreat with little or no forward planning. Despite this, the Chinese Communist Party propagandists portrayed it as a tale of heroism, human endeavour and self-sacrifice. In official historical records within the Communist Party, the Long March is hailed as a victory. The The strategy and military success along the route were attributed to the leadership of Mao Zedong, who during the course of the expedition became the undisputed leader of the CCP. The Long March remains the most mythologized and propaganda-laden event in the history of the CCP. It also marks the beginning of the ascendancy of Mao into the role of party leadership. The Long March became a classic triumph of survival, a picture of stirring memories as they crossed 11 provinces, scaled 18 mountains, crossed 24 wide rivers, and stormed enemy positions. Rivers were crossed on rafts under enemy fire, cliffs scaled in the blackness of night, and forced marches of up to 80 miles in 24 hours. They struggled through blizzards of snow as a romantic history of the Long March, and its legends were more potent today than they ever were. As they set out on the Long March, there was no preset route or even a definite destination, with Shaanxi being one of the options available. Leaving Jiangxi came at a considerable cost to those injured or ill left behind. The fighters left to defend them were slaughtered to the last man when eventually overrun by the Nationalists of the KMT. Those seeking to escape were under constant bombardment from the air, from warlords sympathizing with the KMT as well as the Nationalist troops themselves. During November 1934, after crossing into Hunan province, they met a sizable army of Nationalist forces in the Battle of Xiang River, with the Communists losing around 40,000 people in just 2 days of battle, the heaviest losses faced on the entire Long March. By mid-December, only around 30,000 soldiers remained in the ranks of the Communist force, and after further battles before arriving in Zunyi in Guizhou province in January 1935, a pivotal moment occurred. The Red Army commanders were replaced by a trio of Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, and Wang Jiaxing. 2 years after being replaced by the party, Mao was now back in a more prominent and powerful position. The Red Army under Mao now moved into western China with measures instilled to confuse or evade the Nationalists and their allies. The Long March continued through the provinces of Yunnan and Sichuan, crossing the Great Snowy Mountains, which many survivors described as being the worst part of the entire journey. Mountains in excess of 5,000 meters in height were crossed in conditions of low levels of oxygen. Thousands died of altitude sickness, exposure, frostbite, avalanches, falls, and other injuries. More still perished crossing the grassy swamplands of the Tibetan Plateau, as described by one veteran of the Long March, Xie Fei. Just flat land where it rained every day. The first troops sank into the bog. If you tried to pull them out, you would sink too. They couldn't get out and couldn't be rescued. You could only watch them die. After that, we let the animals walk first. If they sank, at least the people would survive. The unpredictable routes chosen by Mao took the marchers far to the west. In areas where locals were less compliant, food was taken. In areas where there were farmers sympathetic to their cause, they were welcomed, and the wounded were treated too. They found hostility from groups such as the Hui, ethnic Chinese Muslims, where on occasion supplies were stolen or demanded through threats of extortion or kidnapping. In some areas, the Red Army was resupplied by new recruits wanting to join their cause. Others were conscripted into joining. In some remote areas, soldiers suffered from malnutrition and starvation, resorting to extreme measures to survive. When the survivors, around 8,000 soldiers, barely 10% of those that set out, arrived into Shaanxi province, instead of being labelled a catastrophic failure, Mao Zedong, fully aware of the value of propaganda, set about transforming their arrival into a victory. Under the leadership of Mao Zedong, the story of the Long March was portrayed on the terms of the CCP and became incorporated into party, political and cultural history. Instead of being labelled as a low point of the Communist Party, it was proclaimed as a rebirth and one of rejuvenation. The courage of the soldiers, the leadership of Mao, meant they were hailed as heroes and martyrs. But some Western sources reporting on the Long March claimed it to contain a considerable amount of manipulation and distortion, stating that the CCP's official records of the Long March are riddled with gross exaggerations, unverified accounts, and one-sided interpretations. Is that not the case in any account of a battle, where only the victor's account is heard? While some historians are keen to dispel the efficiency of Mao Zedong's leadership during the Long March, while some accounts relate to his brilliance as a tactician and military strategist in avoiding the KMT whenever possible, others claim the meandering route he chose were results of blunders and poor planning. Almost 90 years after the event, historians are still divided on the Long March and its true importance. Within China, few dispute the importance of the Long March, as once word of those that completed the journey into Shaanxi province spread, thousands of young Chinese travelled to his new base to enlist in his Red Army. A decade on from beating the Japanese, the Civil War resumed until 1949, when Mao was able to proclaim the emergence of the People's Republic of China. That is all for this video. If you have enjoyed watching and it has shown you a little detail of life here in China, then your subscribing to my channel would mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching. Make sure you click on the link to the next video, and until the next time, goodbye for now.